Howdy, this is CJ, and I have a spreadsheet solution for you. In today's video, we're going to look at a budget created using Google Sheets. This budget will allow you to gain control of your finances and see how much you make each month and how much you spend. The key thing to remember if you're new to budgeting is that it's never going to be perfect when you start. But it's okay to realize that and start with something so that you start to gain control of your monthly finances. With that, let's take a dive into the sheet and see what it looks like. You can see on the screen here that I have my budget sheet on this tab, this labeled budget, and I have my monthly income, I have my average monthly expenses, and then I have my income minus my expenses. All of this information comes from other tabs. You will see two other tabs at the bottom. There's an income tab, which obviously is how I calculate the income, and the expenses, which are how I calculate the expenses. And we're going to do a deep dive and look at each of those tabs and how the information is created there. Before we do that though, I would like to point out that in this video, as in all of my videos, there is a link in the video's description for a template. And when you navigate there, and click the link, you will see a screen that looks just like this. And you can select the Use Template option, and a copy of the budget sheet will be saved into your Google Drive. You will notice in this particular video, there are some cells that say division by 0, giving you an error. That's because it's a blank spreadsheet and there's nothing there. I'm going to run through how to get information in those cells. So once you copy that, if you follow along, you will no longer have that division by 0 error on your templated copy that you receive in Google Drive. So jumping back at my example here, this information has to come from someplace. So I need to know how much my income is. I need to know how much my expenses are. And you can see that I have two types of expenses, variable expenses, and I have standard expenses that are not variable each month. The key thing is to know all of these and to list them. So I've just put some examples here, like your child's college fund, how much you're sending to savings, an IRA contribution, all of which are things that hopefully you're doing every month in your budget, or this budget will allow you to start doing. Your mortgage or your rent, how much you're spending on groceries and day-to-day expenses. So these are things that I've established that I know every month are the same. So I allot $750 for groceries, for example. But there are others that are variable. My city utilities, my natural gas, my cable, gasoline, cell phone bill, those are all variable expenses. So the first thing is to just sit down, probably pause the video, brainstorm a list of all of your expenses, those that you know that are the same every month, those that you know that are variable. Those that are the same, it's really easy. Just list the amount right here. So if I know I give $100 a month on my IRA, I can list that. If I know that I tithe $50 a month, I can put that down. So once you have a knowledge of what all of your expenses are, then I create a tab called variable expense, and you can see variable expense right here. And I just listed all of my variable expenses across in these various columns. Now you can see that I have 6 of them. It's very possible you might have 2 or 3, or you might have 10. Either way, it's okay. Add as many columns as you need. And then I just created a line for each month. So there's January through December of 2022, and continuing on 2023, 2024, obviously, nothing is there yet for November and December. For each of those, I'm going to list a value. And as I enter those values over time, I will get a much better average, and my average will start to become very accurate. So at the end of that column, at the bottom of that column, I am going to use the function, and I'm going to use the average option. You can see this particular cell is an average. If we look right here, an average of C2 to C37. So again, if you're starting in year 1, maybe that's 2024, maybe it's 2025, and whatever it is, you can create a line for each month, and then you can create the average. And then what I do at the end of each year is I just go in and I insert 12 rows below, and I repeat the process again for the following year, making sure to adjust this formula for the new range of cells. So once I have those expenses, those variable expenses, I go back to my budget sheet, and I'm going to link that. So I'm going to go to insurance, and I'm going to say equals, and I'm going to then find the insurance tab right here, and I'm going to hit enter. And then I'm going to do the same with city utilities and natural gas, and you can see right here, I'm linking to that sheet. So I'm saying, okay, this equals cell E38 in variable expense. So cell E38 in variable expense is right there, 136.65. and I can see it matches up here. I also decided on mine to put the variable expenses in a different color in the table. That's purely optional, but I like to do that just so I know those are my variable expenses. And again, you may have more or less than I do, but that's all you do is you create a column for each one, you start entering the values, you create an average, and you take the average and you link it back to the budget sheet right here. And then in this column right here, I do a total. So I use the function and I go and select sum. And notice that this cell right here is a sum of G2 to G20. So it is totaling everything from here to there. Those are my monthly expenses. In this case, in this example, $6,913.77. Obviously, I need to also calculate my income. So I'm going to do the same thing. I have an income sheet, or tab rather, on the sheet, excuse me, an income tab on the sheet. And you may have one or two incomes. If you have a spouse or a partner, you may have multiple 3 or 4 incomes, depending if you do some side jobs or side gigs or whatever the case may be. I just listed 2 for demonstration purposes. Also, some people get paid every week, some people get paid every 2 weeks, some people get paid every month. It varies greatly. And I put week 1. You could just as easily also put paycheck 1 right here if you wanted to, and then start entering the income. So here on week 1 or paycheck 1 for the income 1 column, I got $1,700 even. Second one, I got $1,753. And I do the exact same thing I did in expenses. I go down to wherever my last one is, and if I'm starting, maybe I create 10 rows and I start entering them for the next 10 pay cycles, and I start to generate an average. And I'm going to use the function option, and I'm going to select average again, and you can see this is an average of B3 to B53. So I'm going from, B2, a mistake there I caught, so I'll fix that one. That is B2 to B53. And then this one should also be C2 to C53, so glad I checked that, C2 to C53. And that will give me the average. So I have now income 1 and income 2. Here's the real key to mastering the income portion of this. When I click back on the budget tab, income 1 is going to be linked just like the average monthly expenses were. So I'm linking this back to income B54. So if I go back here, I can see it's linked right there. That's income number 1. And then how many times per month am I paid? Because this income tab is generating an average of all of your paychecks. So if I'm paid twice a month, I need to take that amount times 2. If I'm paid 4 times a month, I need to take that amount times 4. I just did 2 because that's the most common way that people are paid. So times paid per month, 2, and then income number 2 is 2 times per month as well. But it could also be if you have a consulting job or a side gig or whatever, maybe that's 1. So maybe one of these is 2 and this one's 1, for example. You can change that. And notice that number changes greatly. And over here I have total. So it's taking B3, so my average paycheck, times the number of times I get paid per month is giving me my total. And the same thing for the second income. And then for my total income, I'm using the function option right here, and I am selecting the sum option. So I'm summing D3 and D4. So I'm making $6,924.23 every month. I'm spending $6,913.77 every month. And then in the last column here, I'm going to take my income minus my expenses. So in this case, it's D5, which is my income right here, minus my expenses, which are in G21. So you can see I'm taking the expenses away from the income each month. Now, ideally, I personally like to get this about as close to 0 as I can because I like to account for everything in the average monthly expense here. If I'm sending money to savings and I'm depositing money for, my kid's allowance, or I'm taking personal money out for my wife or for then I like to have all that accounted for so that there isn't a huge amount left there. Different people have different thoughts on that. That's just kind of my general thought on how I like to organize everything to get that down close-ish to 0, somewhere between $0 and $50 every month. Again, I would encourage you to visit the link that is in the description to get a template of the sheet that I just showed so you can start working on your own budget. If you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments, and go ahead and subscribe as well if you're interested in learning more about how spreadsheets can help you out. Thanks, and have a great day.